Why do you feel calmer when a dog rests its head on your knee than when a person tells you they love you? Why does the silence of an animal feel safer than the words of someone who promised to stay? And what if the reason you trust animals more than people has nothing to do with being cold, antisocial, or broken, and everything to do with something that happened long before you had the words to explain it? You've probably been told you're a bit guarded. Maybe someone called you distant, or hard to read, or said you keep people at arm's length. And maybe a part of you quietly agreed, because you felt it too. That strange relief when a room empties of humans. That involuntary softening when an animal walks in. Here's what most people will never tell you. That pattern is not a personality flaw. It's a nervous system that learned something early, something it never forgot. And by the end of this, you may understand yourself in a way no one has ever offered you before. They bond with animals because animals are predictable. There is a profound difference between those two things, and that difference is the entire story. When you reach toward an animal, you already know what you're going to get. There is no hidden agenda behind its eyes. There is no version of it that's warm today and cold tomorrow for reasons you'll spend the night decoding. It does not love you on Monday and withdraw on Thursday to teach you a lesson. It does not store your weaknesses to use them later in an argument. It simply exists beside you, and in that existence there is a kind of safety that some people search their whole lives to find in other humans and almost never do. The truth underneath all of this is uncomfortable but freeing to finally hear. Some people learned, far too early, that humans could hurt them emotionally, and that animals could not. That single piece of learning, absorbed before you could even articulate it, quietly shaped decades of how you connect, who you trust, and where your body finally lets its guard down. There are childhoods where the air itself had a temperature, and you learned to read it before you learned to read words. You knew, from the sound of a door closing, what kind of night it would be. You knew, from the rhythm of footsteps, whether to become smaller or stay still. Love, in these homes, was not absent. It was conditional on the weather of someone else's emotions. And that weather could change without warning. So you became an expert in a skill no child should master, anticipating other people's moods to keep yourself safe. In adulthood, this never really turns off. You walk into rooms and scan faces. You hear a slight change in someone's tone, and your stomach reorganizes itself. You apologize for things that were never yours. And then there is the animal, the creature that never required you to predict its emotional storms, because it had none aimed at you. Its consistency was not a relief from chaos. It was the first proof that closeness did not have to come with surveillance. Some people had to become weather forecasters before they were old enough to tie their shoes. And they have been exhausted ever since. One day you were adored. The next day you were too much, or not enough, or invisible. And you were never told which version of you had caused the shift. So you did the only thing a developing mind can do. You decided the problem must be you. And you began the lifelong project of trying to figure out what you'd done. As an adult, you may notice you don't fully trust good moments. When someone is kind to you, a quiet part of you is already waiting for the withdrawal. Because warmth that comes and goes without explanation doesn't feel like love. It feels like a trap that hasn't sprung yet. But an animal's affection has no withdrawal phase. It does not love you less because you were quiet at dinner. It does not punish you with distance. And for a heart trained to brace, that steadiness is almost overwhelming in how gentle it is. Some people never learned that love could simply stay. They only learned to flinch before it left. For people who grew up having to manage someone else's emotions to stay safe, connection was never free. It always cost something. So even now, even with people you genuinely like, there is a meter running in the background, and by the end of an evening, you are spent in a way that feels almost physical. Then you come home and an animal looks at you, and for the first time in hours the meter stops. Nothing is being calculated. Nothing is being earned. You can sit in the same room and simply be a body that exists, and that is enough. With animals, some people aren't relaxing. They are finally resting from a job they never agreed to take. And if this is putting words to something you've carried quietly, genuinely helps this reach other people who feel the same and think they're the only one. A cat that found you on the worst nights as if it knew. An animal that didn't ask what was wrong, didn't need you to explain, didn't require you to be okay. It just stayed. And in a childhood where staying was rare, that animal was not a pet. It was an anchor. It was sometimes The first relationship that taught you what safety even felt like in the body, that loosening in the chest, that permission to stop performing. Years later, when you feel that same loosening only around animals, it isn't a quirk, it's a return. You are not choosing animals over people. You are going back to the place where your nervous system first learned it was allowed to be calm. Some people's earliest memory of feeling truly safe doesn't have a human face in it at all. When you grow up in an environment where things could shift without warning, your brain doesn't develop a flaw, it develops a specialty. It becomes extraordinarily good at detecting danger in faces, in pauses, in the half second before someone speaks. This kept you safe once. It was intelligent, it was adaptive, but it doesn't know the danger has passed, so it keeps running, and it runs hardest around humans. Because humans were the original variable. You can be in a pleasant conversation, and some ancient part of you is still reading the other person for the turn. With an animal, that system finally finds nothing to scan. There is no subtext in a sleeping dog. There is no second meaning behind a cat's slow blink. And in that absence of threat, your hypervigilance does something it rarely gets to do. It powers down. The peace you feel around animals isn't really about the animal. It's the rare experience of your own alarm system going quiet. So you grew into someone who, on a level deeper than thought, believes connection must be deserved continuously. That the moment you stop being useful or impressive or low maintenance, people will leave. This is why rest feels dangerous to you. Why being a burden feels like the worst possible thing to be. And then there is the animal that adores you on a day you accomplished nothing. That sits with you when you are at your least impressive, your least useful, your least okay. It does not love the performance. It loves the presence. And for someone who had to earn every scrap of warmth, being loved while doing absolutely nothing is so foreign it can bring tears. Some people spent their whole childhood auditioning for love, and an animal was the first thing that let them stop. Think about how much of human closeness asks of you. The right expressions, the conversation that flows, the reciprocity, the timing, the unspoken rules about how much to share and when. For most people, this is automatic. For people shaped by unsafe early relationships, all of it is conscious labor, a costume of okayness worn so consistently that even the people closest to them have never met the person underneath. With an animal, the costume comes off because there is no audience requiring it. You don't have to be interesting. You don't have to be healed. You don't have to translate your inner state into something socially acceptable. You can be exactly as much of a mess as you are, and the relationship does not waver. Some people aren't quiet around animals because they have nothing to say. They are quiet because, for once, they don't have to perform being fine. The 8th pattern is the unconscious fear of human intimacy. This is the deepest one, and the hardest to admit, because it doesn't feel like fear. It feels like preference. It feels like simply liking your own company, liking the quiet, finding people a little tiring. But underneath some of that preference is a learned equation written long ago. Closeness equals risk. Letting someone in equals handing them the map to where you can be hurt. If the people who were supposed to love you safely were the same people who hurt you, then intimacy itself became wired to danger. And a part of you has been quietly keeping humans at the exact distance where they can't reach the wound. Animals are safe to love completely because they cannot betray you in the ways humans did. They cannot weaponize your history. They cannot leave you with words designed to stay. So you pour into them the full, unguarded love you've never quite dared to risk on a person. And it is real love. But it is also, sometimes, the only place that love has ever felt allowed to be that big. Some people don't love animals more than people. They love animals more freely, because animals are the only ones they were never taught to fear. Maybe you never loved animals simply because they were gentle. Maybe what you loved, what you have always been quietly returning to, was the feeling of emotional safety you found beside them, and so rarely found beside people. Read that again, slowly. The animals were never the point. The safety was the point. The not having to brace was the point. The being loved without an invoice attached was the point. And everything you've recognized in yourself tonight was not weakness. And it was not avoidance. And it was not you being broken. It was a child who found a way to feel safe in a world that didn't reliably offer it, and who was intelligent enough and resourceful enough to find that safety wherever it actually existed, even if the only place it existed had 4 legs and could not speak. That is not dysfunction. That is survival authored by a part of you that was determined to protect you. You should feel something like respect for it. It was a conclusion drawn from a sample size you did not choose, in a place you could not leave, at an age when you had no power to find better evidence. Not every human connection has to cost you what those early ones did. Not every person is a storm you'll have to forecast. There exist, somewhere out past the reach of what you were taught, people whose presence asks nothing of your performance and nothing of your guard. People who can offer the same steadiness you found in an animal, in a language you were told humans didn't speak. You may not believe that yet. You don't have to. You only have to leave the door unlocked enough that, if such a person ever arrives, the oldest part of you doesn't slam it shut on instinct before the rest of you gets to decide. Leave a comment, even one line about the part that named something you've never said out loud, because someone scrolling through, certain they're the only one who feels this, needs to see that they aren't. And if this gave words to something you've carried in silence, a like is a small thing that quietly carries it to the next person who needs it. There's another video waiting for you on the screen right now. It goes deeper into exactly this part of you, and it might be the next thing you didn't know you needed to hear. Stay with it a moment longer. You've come this far for a reason, and the fact that you found that safety at all, even in silence, even in something that could not say your name, means the part of you capable of love was never the part that broke. It was the part that survived, and it has been waiting, quietly, all this time, for a world gentle enough to finally come out into.